Today, we're looking at a blue-black ink by Sailor 4B. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below, but if you've got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire video. If you'd like, you can follow me over on Instagram as an ink guy. Also, if you're new here, I do fountain pen ink reviews daily, so I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Parker jotter with a medium nib to write for a day and to take my notes for this video. In order to standardize, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in this first writing sample. There will be more writing samples on different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is ever so slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does offer some spots of shading. Like the K is much darker in quick, the BR is much darker in brown. The is very, very dark. Fox does start dark, gets slightly lighter, and then very dark again. 11 seconds to dry. Now, medium is slightly darker than the extra fine, right about where the stub is. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some spots of shading, like quick is very dark to very dark. Brown is very dark to dark. It has 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us there is some color variation, far left to far right, and we do get it. It's going to be hard to see in these writing samples because this is a very dark ink. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 17 seconds to dry. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 26 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us no color variation, and we didn't get any. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading, very dark K, very dark LA. The word the is very dark. The word dry is like 1 or 2 tones lighter than the word over directly above it. So it is there. It's very subtle. It's 14 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, same as the stub again, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine, looking far left to far right, shows us some color variation, and we did get that. Medium shows us none, and we got none. I agree with Vita that there's a lot to be learned by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and put it immediately in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this very grayish tone at the bottom working its way up, and then we see the very dark blue and kind of a line of black across the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and what was that grayish line looks like a very dark aquamarine line. The blue pushes its way up, and we still see that kind of blackish line across the top. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I don't use this as a note taker. It just gets so messy that I don't want to use this myself. Taking notes, I don't want my notes to look like that. Water's lifting only the darkest parts of the ink. It's leaving a lot of it behind. It's really not making the most significant difference, or much difference at all, to be honest. Pen flush is doing about the same thing that water's doing. It's really not getting there. Now the thing is, on Sailor inks, I've never had an issue cleaning them out of the pens, but their resistance tests on paper show very different.
Now the 1/3 bleach solution removed most of that stuff, left the kind of greenish tone where the first one looked grayish. And the second chromatography had that kind of aquamarine teal look to it, and well, there's some green. Now that's not completely gone with the 1/3 bleach solution. I don't think you're going to need that to get that out of your pen, but if you did, just use water immediately after to not rust your pen. But honestly, I've never had to use more than pen flush to get Sailor inks out of my pens.
I test the viscosity or flow using a tilt test, which I'm going to link the video showing how I do that. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9.
Sailor's 4B has a viscosity of 1.89, making it a wetter ink.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average all of those. Now for the inks I've tested, I've found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Sailor's 4B has an average dry time of 18 seconds, so despite it being a wetter ink, its dry time is normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Sailor's 4B, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted to go with a nice orange, and I chose Elixir's Tangerine.
The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, Levenger, and white lines paper.
So we're looking at the yellow Rhodia to see what kind of color change we might see for putting it with a yellow background. Now, interestingly, we get much more than I really expected. Nothing shows in the scrubby. That aquamarine kind of color is more pronounced all the way through the writing on the yellow compared to the white, so it's not a very opaque ink. It's quite translucent, letting that yellow really affect its color, which I was kind of surprised about in this case. Levenger notebooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 stub has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading, spots where it starts a little bit lighter and gets a little bit darker, spots where it's dark and then super dark like on the K. So it does that, like brown starts super dark and then just becomes dark. 10 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine, far left to far right, shows a little bit of color variation, and that's what we're getting here. Little bit of color variation. The medium shows none, and we got none. Last up is white lines paper. Now this paper is not meant for fountain pens, but we do find stuff that works very well. On the medium, we do get a bunch of bleeding spots and ghosting, but it doesn't touch the page underneath. But I don't know about using the back of the page. The extra fine does very well. The 1.1 stub has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter, couple of shades lighter, more separation between these colors than we've seen on any other paper. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 8 seconds to dry. Medium, back to the same tone as the 1.1 stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get color variation, and that is all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Sailor 4B? This is among the group of inks that I consider perfect blue blacks. It's just dark enough to let you know that it's not a blue, but certainly blue leaning enough that it is not a black. Now there are some performance challenges that it has on some cheaper paper, but it's much more of a paper issue than it is an ink issue. So what nib and pen would give the best writing experience with this ink? And this ink is very funny because if you use a dry pen, it's much more blue leaning. If you use a wet pen, it's much more black leaning. But if you use a medium flow pen, it's just right. It's the Goldilocks of inks. It is truly medium broad, makes a beautiful color. That's what I want to use it in. If you've enjoyed this video, remember, I like thumbs up, you like thumbs up, everybody likes thumbs up. Unless you didn't like it, then give me the thumbs down. Both are good. Thanks for watching.